I'm Justin Mott, full-time photographer, Leica user, former reality TV show host from a TV show that you've probably never heard of called Photo Face Off on History Channel Asia. I'm a wildlife photojournalist and assignment photographer. I've shot over 100 assignments for the New York Times around the world, and I own and operate my own commercial photography and video production business called Mott Visuals, based here in Vietnam and working globally. My channel is dedicated to all things photography from the perspective of a full-time working photographer. Today I'm going to talk about three Leica systems. I'm going to talk about the Leica M system, the Leica SL system, and the Leica Q system. Now, I'm not going to go into specific models within each of these systems because there are different variations within each system. I'm just going to talk about each of these camera systems at their core. I'm going to compare and contrast them based on three criteria. The first criteria will be look, feel, design, and overall aesthetic of the camera, what it feels like in your hand, what it feels like to use it as a photographer for a full day. Number two will be based on value, what each system gives you for the price. The last thing I'll touch on is the basic features of each camera, what they offer, and in the Leica M's case, what they don't offer, and why that might be a benefit to you. So let's begin. Let's talk Leica. As usual, well, not as usual. I've added some new items to my online store. I've added like a whole educational section. In addition to my one-on-one 1-hour sessions for $99, I offer a 3-session bundle package with 3 1-hour sessions for $250, so you're saving $50 right there. And the one I'm really excited about is my assignment package. This is like a mini personalized one-on-one workshop. It is $300 for 3 1-hour sessions based over the course of 3 weeks. And how it works is I give you a personalized assignment based on your level of photography and based on your interest in photography. So check that out. It's all available on my site. Also have a new black and white preset on there and a new bundle package for my presets. And as always, I still sell my prints for $99 with free shipping globally. So full disclosure here, I actually only own and use the M10 system, but I have used the Leica Q system and the Leica L system in the past in the field, and I have used both of these cameras professionally, but I have not used them extensively like I have the Leica M. I borrowed both of these cameras in a collaboration with Leica Vietnam and Leica Singapore, but with no barter, no money attached, and with no stipulations. Whenever you're looking to buy a camera or to invest in a system, and that's what it is, especially when you're purchasing Leica, all of their products are premium, so that comes with a premium price tag. So it is an investment, so you should give a lot of deep thought into this. You should listen to a lot of different people, but ultimately you need to listen to yourself. Ultimately, you need to be honest with yourself. I'm going to talk about my experience using these cameras, but my experience is going to be a lot different than all of you out there. We are all so different, and don't always listen to camera companies. Leica's no different. All camera companies are the same. They are trying to cast the widest net. They're trying to sell the most cameras. That's what they're in business to do. So the way I look at a camera system, the way I like to invest, and the things that I like to look for before I buy a camera system is I don't look at who they're targeting it toward. I look at the features, I look at the design. I know how I like to work, I know what I need, I know what I don't need, and then I make my decision based on that. The last thing you want to do is buy one of these camera systems and invest a lot of money and make the wrong decision and regret it later. So be true to yourself. Be objective when you're listening to all this information, because in the end, you're going to be the one using these cameras for full and long days and hopefully for many years. So I'm going to give you a breakdown about these cameras, and hopefully some of this information will help guide you into a purchase or help guide you into not purchasing. That's really up to you. Today will not be a technical review. I'm not going to put files side by side. I'm not going to put specs side by side. You can see all that information on Leica's website or on another YouTuber who really specializes in that. I like to talk about feel. I like to talk about cameras that I've actually used, and I like to talk from my own experience. So what it's like when I use them. I can't really speak for you, but I can speak deeply about my experience using these cameras, and I hope you find that helpful. So the first thing I'm going to start with is overall aesthetic, feel, and design. What it's like to use these cameras, what it's like to hold them in your hand. I'm going to start here with the biggest camera here, the Leica SL. Now this camera is chunky. This camera has weight. This camera is robust. It does feel like a professional camera in your hand. It has the Leica premium quality to it. All the knobs and dials are in all the right places, but it is quite a hefty camera, especially when you start to add the Leica SL SL lenses. So if you're coming from a Leica M system or a Leica Q system, this camera will feel heavy in your hand. But if you're coming from using a professional digital SLR, if you're coming from using like a flagship camera from Canon, it will be comparable to that, but it will feel a lot differently in your hand. It does have that Leica polish to it. Again, all the knobs, all the dials, everything minimalistic, beautiful design. It feels right in your hand. If you're a larger person, you will like the way this camera feels when you're holding it. It has a very, very stout grip here, but if you are smaller, if you have smaller hands, you might have some trouble with this camera because the grip, the distance here is quite significant. It is a hefty camera. Without the lens, it comes in at 2.1 pounds or 953 grams. And once you start adding these lenses to it, it does get heavy. If you use this camera for a full day out in the field where you're on your feet, you're taking thousands of pictures, if that's the way you work, you will feel this camera around your neck, you'll feel it around your shoulder, or you'll feel it in your camera bag. The weight does start to add up. If you're working in a controlled environment where you can put your bag down, it might not be a big deal for you. Or if you're just used to carrying a lot of gear, if you do landscape photography and you can, have your camera on a tripod, set your bag down, and you're not constantly wearing it, then it won't be a big deal for you. For me, this camera system is like a commitment camera. It's like something that you go out with a commitment to take photographs. You're gonna need your own bag for it. You're gonna make decisions based on carrying all this gear with you. Whereas the other two, it's easy to just throw it on your shoulder, throw it in a small bag, and just go out the doors. One thing I should mention, to be fair, and how I have used this camera, if you're using it with the Leica M lenses with the Leica adapter, then it is a different ballgame. The camera does get significantly less in weight. You don't have those giant bulky lenses with you. I have used the SL with my M lenses. Specifically, I've used it with my Leica 35. It does feel a lot different. So this camera is versatile in that way. If you had the adapter and you put on a Leica M lens with it, then you've got a totally different feel to it. It's a lot easier to just put it on your shoulder. It's a lot easier to use for a full day. That's how I've used it. It is still heavier than the Leica M and the Leica Q. Next up here is the Leica Q. This camera comes with a built-in 28mm lens, so the full weight of this camera is 1.7 pounds or 718 grams. So when you factor that in, this camera is extremely light. It's also very, very compact. It's not nearly as bulky, not nearly as robust as the SL system. It feels really nice in your hands. Again, if you're a smaller person or if you just have smaller hands, this camera will feel perfect. It has the Leica aesthetic. While it's not as dense and doesn't have as much as a professional feel as the Leica SL, it still does have that Leica quality. All the knobs and dials are in a perfect place. It feels really good in your hand. It's got this nice little curvature in the back here for your thumb. It's the kind of camera you can put around your neck, put around your shoulder. It's not like a commitment to go out with this camera like it is with this camera. So you're more likely to have this camera on you at all times. But again, we all work differently, so if that's something appealing to you, you might really enjoy using this camera. It's the kind of camera you're just gonna have around, do family photos, travel photos, but even for documentary, I've used this camera and it does feel fantastic in your hand. It doesn't feel cheap or flimsy or anything like that. It just doesn't feel as professional as the other two Leica camera systems. Another great thing about this camera compared to the SL is if you want to blend in, if you don't want to look like a photographer, this camera is perfect for that. The Leica SL, as soon as you take it out with the Leica SL lenses, you are a photographer. You are present as a photographer, so other people will be aware of that. Other people are aware of your camera. That might be important to you, or it might not. Depends again on what you like to shoot. You just look like an everyday dude with a camera. You're not present as a photographer. It's overall just a lot more discreet. So moving on to the Leica M system, and again, this is the one that I have used the most. The weight here on the Leica M10 without any lens on it is 1.45 pounds or 660 grams. So it's heavier than Leica Q2 when you add an M lens to it, but it's a lot lighter than the Leica SL system. For me, this is the perfect balance of weight to size ratio. The dimensions of this camera, it does feel really nice in your hand. It feels about the perfect size, but it does feel nice and dense. It does feel professional. It's not as bulky, not as robust as the SL, but it's not as lightweight as the Q. But I like that feeling. It's very, very dense. It does have a very analog feel to it, a very mechanical feel to it. The little ISO dial here that kind of pops up and you feel it here. This little curvature in the back where your thumb goes. All these little details are very, very important. When you're on your feet for 10 to 15 hours shooting constantly, all the little things about how it feels on your neck, on your shoulder, feels in your hand, how it feels up your eye. I just like where everything is. I like the way it feels when I'm taking a picture. I like the sound of the mechanical shutter. I like where all the little knobs and dials are. Again, it feels very, very analog, but not in a cheesy vintage, like wannabe hipster type of way. They have a history and a pedigree of producing beautifully designed rangefinder cameras, and that shows up in their identity even in their newest camera. I like that feel to it. That kind of stuff matters to me. I've used this camera for hours upon hours. I've taken thousands of photographs in many, many different countries, and for me, overall, this is the one that just feels best everywhere. On my shoulder, on my neck, in the back, up to my face, and just operationally using this camera, I just like where everything is on it, and I like the way it works. One thing I should mention about the build and overall quality, they all do have that Leica premium feel to it. Everything on it, everything is premium. You don't have that plasticky feel. It all feels very nice. But one thing I should mention, which is important to some people, is these two cameras here, the Leica Q and the Leica SL, are weather sealed, and the Leica M system is not. So if you like to shoot in rough climates, if you like to shoot in the rain, the Leica M system might not be for you. Now, I have used the Leica M in light rain, and I have had no issues with it, but I don't feel comfortable using it in really heavy rain or really heavy snow, where I'd feel a lot more comfortable with these two systems here. So overall, look, feel, design, and aesthetic, the Leica M system is a huge winner for me, just because of all the things that I explained and how I like to work. Second place, I would say, is the Leica Q, because it's the most similar to the Leica M. Now, there's nothing wrong with the way the Leica SL feels. It does feel really nice in your hand. It is beautifully designed. The way this camera feels and the way it's designed is really, really exceptional. If you compare it to the top-of-line Canon or Nikon cameras, I've actually used the Canon 1D system extensively early on in my career, and this just does feel a lot better. So if you're coming from that system, you will like the feel of the SL, but if you're used to something like a rangefinder, the SL will feel quite bulky in your hands. Moving on to the basic features of these cameras, the menu system is pretty comparable across all three systems. I like it. I wouldn't say I absolutely love it like I do the Hasselblad system. For any of you that have used the Hasselblad medium format system, I have a Hasselblad X1D that I use for all my commercial work, and I absolutely love their menu system. I love the icons. I love the simplicity of it. I kind of wish Leica would adapt something like that. I don't hate their menu system like I do like a Sony system, where you get lost in there for like months and you come out and you're like Tom Hanks in Castaway, like, what happened? Where am I? Like, it's not like that. It's pretty simple to use, pretty easy, but I just happen to love the Hasselblad system. I love the icons. If you ever get a chance to check out their menu system, I'd love to see Leica adapt some of those features. The one thing I do like about the SL compared to the other two is this little joystick on the back here. I really like this for navigating different focus points. I really like it for just using the menu system. It's really, really intuitive. It just works well. It's just kind of fun to use. I don't think it would work well on the M system, because the M system really does have an analog mechanical feel to it, so it wouldn't really blend in well there, and especially with the way the M system is designed, I don't see a place for it. Maybe it could work on the Q system, I don't know, maybe it's something we'll see in the future, but I just really, really like the way it works here on the SL system. There's a lot of real estate back there, so it does feel natural. It's in the perfect location. It's just kind of fun to use. It's a fun way to pick your focus points. It's a fun way to navigate. Now, talking about sensors across each three systems, they're all gonna have an option for a lower megapixel sensor or a higher megapixel sensor. So really you just have to think about what you actually need. The Leica M10 has a 24 megapixel sensor. If you wanted to invest in a newer M10R and get a 40 megapixel sensor, go for it. But for me, 24 megapixels, and I do print my work. It is printed in international magazines, and I do sell prints of my work, and I do print very, very large. I've never had any problems with the 24 megapixel sensor. So if you're really chasing pixels and chasing a ton of features, Leica's probably not the right system for you. Honestly, like, you can get way more megapixels, you can get way more features in a Sony for a fraction of the price. Leica is really about the design and the aesthetic. I've talked extensively about what I like about the Leica system and how it forces me to work a way that I want to work, in a way that I believe makes me a better photographer, but that's in a whole separate episode. I'll put a link up here if you want to check it out. The episode is called Why Leica. So check that out if you're really interested to know why I actually use Leica and why maybe you should or shouldn't use Leica. So megapixels and sensor quality, again, you're just going to have different options with each of these systems, but they both have pretty comparable options compared to each other as far as sensors. Now, when it comes to frames per second, it comes to focusing, obviously the Leica M10 is just out. It is a manual focus camera. It shoots roughly 5 frames per second, so it's not a performance camera. That's not what it's built for. That's not how you're intended to use this camera. The Leica M10 is immediately out of that category. With the Leica SL, it is a more performance-based camera, so you can shoot up to 20 frames per second continuously. This camera is fast. It can shoot fast. The Leica Q can shoot at 10 frames per second. The autofocus, in my experience, has been just fine on both of these cameras. I don't use the high frame rate, not doing crazy things with autofocus, like a lot of tracking and stuff like that, so I don't have enough experience to talk about those type of things. Just tell you, yes, the Leica SL will be the best at performance, focusing, frames per second, stuff like that. Leica Q second and Leica M way off in the distance, like way trailing behind. When talking about shutter sound, something that's actually important to me, a lot of people don't care about that stuff. I do. The Leica M10 has a beautiful sounding shutter. They're all very, very quiet. The mechanical shutter on the Leica M10 though just has a beautiful feel to it. You can just kind of feel taking a picture. I would say second place there is a Leica SL. Third is the Q2. The Q feels very, very digital. I mean, they're all digital cameras, but the Q just feels the most digital. Now talking about the viewfinder, obviously the M10 is a rangefinder camera, so you're looking through an optical viewfinder, so what you see is what you get. I like that feel, I enjoy that experience, that's just the way I like to shoot. I like to see everything very clear. The Leica Q2 does have a nice electronic viewfinder. The resolution is really nice on that. It's not bad to look through. Again, it does feel digital, but something really cool about the SL system is the resolution on the electronic viewfinder in the SL system is absolutely amazing. It is crystal clear. It is really, really big. It's the closest thing, it's the most comparable to an optical viewfinder. It really does feel like what you see is what you get. And it's just a beautiful, crystal clear experience. The resolution on this SL2S, looking through that electronic viewfinder, is the closest thing I've ever experienced to looking through an optical viewfinder. I was actually quite shocked at how crystal clear and how beautiful it is. I really don't like electronic viewfinders at all, but if you pick up the Leica SL and look through it, you will be amazed. And just overall, for people looking for professional features in a camera, like dual card slot, deeper customizable menu system with just different and more options, the SL is the clear leader in that. It really does, by leaps and bounds, outperform both of these other cameras, like easily. One other nice little feature built in on the Leica Q2 here is the 28mm lens has a built-in macro options. I have used it actually quite a bit doing my wildlife stories. When I want to get close shots of hands or details on an animal, it does come in handy to have that, so it is a nice little feature that the Q has that the other two cameras don't, because again, has a built-in lens, these cameras don't. And the last thing for features is just talking about video. The M10 doesn't shoot video, the Leica Q2 shoots video, although I don't see myself using it that way. But where it gets interesting is this camera right here, the Leica SL2S. It really does have professional quality video features in it. So if you're a hybrid shooter, this camera will be amazing for you because it shoots in 4K, it shoots in 10-bit, it does have in-camera stabilization. So for those of you that shoot stills and shoot video, this might be the way for you to go. Just going based on the amount of features, Leica SL, Leica Q2, and the Leica M. Now last, I'm gonna talk about value. A lot of you are gonna scoff when I say Leica and say the word value in the same sentence, but here's my argument for that, especially with the Leica M10 system. Its lack of features means a lack of need for me to upgrade my camera. Whereas these other two cameras are just a lot of digital cameras in general, people that are chasing megapixels, people that are chasing features, they're constantly updating their cameras. I know you don't like to think you do, but a lot of people do. They upgrade their cameras every few years. So if you're buying a digital body for a few $1,000s every few years, that's going to add up. With something like the Leica M10, or especially my Leica M10D, it turns on, it turns off. Yes, its one feature is it can connect to the Leica app wirelessly, which I barely use. I can change the ISO, I can change the shutter, and I can change the aperture on the actual lens. So that is all for the features. It has a 24 megapixel sensor, which is absolutely perfect for me. So I have no need to upgrade. What's going to come out? A different way to turn it on? More shutter speed options? I mean, there's nothing to upgrade. So the M10 system for me, even at $8,000, is a good value because I don't hopefully need to buy a new camera for a very, very, very long time. So about value, I'm just going to compare value within these systems. I'm not going to compare them to other systems. Again, you can get a lot more features for your money from the other camera systems. The draw of Leica, or at least the draw of Leica for me, is the overall build quality and the overall design and aesthetic of their cameras. It is absolutely beautiful, and trust me, I have used just about every single camera out there through my entire career. So overall value, let's start with the price. The Leica M10 comes in at about $8,000. The Leica SL2S, which I have here, comes in at $5,000. Their high megapixel performance camera, that's more about photography, less about videography, comes in at $6,500. And the Leica Q2 here sells for $5,500. So all extremely expensive. I'd say the Leica SL2 ranks last for overall value. If you're just talking about the Leica SL2 on its own for $6,600, the 45 megapixel camera, I just think at that price point, it just has too much competition from the other big names in the market, whereas truly, I don't think like the Leica M10 has any competition. Some of you will argue, oh, Fuji makes a very comparable camera, and I know a lot of you like Fuji, but I have used the Fuji X Pro 1 and X Pro 2, and for me, it is night and day the difference. I just really don't like the way it feels in your hand. I don't like the design. I don't like the aesthetic, not nearly as much as I like the M10s. I understand the arguments, I understand the comparisons, but I have used both cameras. I have used them extensively. I have used them professionally. And the Leica M10D, I know it's way, way more expensive, and I understand you can get this amount of things for that, but I use this camera so much, so all those little things that Leica beats out the Fuji for start to add up, and for me, the M10 is just a better overall experience. I would say the Leica SL2S, because of all its professional video features, then if you just compare the Leica SL2S compared to the M10, maybe it could be a close second for overall value. So if you just take the Leica SL2S at only $5,000, I know only $5,000, but with its professional video features, another cool thing for me is just the versatility of this camera. You know, like I said before, you could add the Leica M adapter and have a whole different experience. It's not as bulky, it's not as heavy, it's not as much of a commitment going out. If you added the adapter and added M lenses to it, and then shooting M lenses for video is also rather interesting. Something I haven't done much yet, but something I'm really eager to do once I can go travel again, once I can get out there again in the field. Overall value, I'm gonna say that Leica Q2 gives you the best value at $5,500 just because it has this beautiful 28 1.7 lens included. It's a really nice lens. A lot of cameras like this don't come with a great stock lens on them. They just throw like kind of a crap lens on there. Leica didn't do that. It's a really sharp, well-built lens. Also, it just has some nice features on it. The built-in macro function. Also, I should mention at 47 megapixels, you do have the option to crop. So, you know, they like to say it's 4 lenses in one. I don't really look at it that way, but if you do crop, you can get 28 millimeters without cropping. Then as you crop in, you obviously lose megapixels, but you can use it as a 35 millimeter, a 50 millimeter, and a 75 millimeter. A little button on the back that you can see the frame line, so you can crop in like real time and sort of see the difference in the frame you're getting. It's okay to me. It's something I would use a little bit. You're just basically like cropping in camera. It's nice so you can see your compositions that way, but it's not like getting 4 Leica M lenses for the price of 1. It's a lot lighter than having all 4 of those, and it would save you money, but it's not really like that. So I have used that feature. I'd say I like it for 35, a little bit for 50 at 75. I wouldn't really use it that way, but some of you might. But just overall quality, I mean, this is your ticket into the Leica world. If you care about design, you care about aesthetic, this has all of those things that draw people to a Leica. They haven't skimped there. It has a great feel to it. That little carved area in the back where your thumb, the overall feel in your hand, the weight to it, the materials, everything is very, very Leica-like. So even at $5,500, I still think it's great value. It's the kind of camera that is extremely versatile. You can do everything with it. It does shoot video as well, like the Leica SL2, but I wouldn't say it shoots video at a professional level like the SL2S does. So overall value, I'm gonna give first place here to the Leica Q. It's a nice entry point into the Leica world for those of you looking to come on board. So that's my experience using these cameras. That's how I explain it. I hope you're not more confused than when you started. Again, like I said, we are all so different. So I just wanted to share my experience using these different cameras and the way that I like to use cameras. So I like all of these cameras for different things, but where it gets really intriguing for me is how you mix and match. Now I realize for a lot of you out there, that's just not an option. One Leica camera is enough to just sort of blow up your budget. So adding 2 Leica cameras might seem absolutely crazy, but for those of you interested in mixing and matching, that's where it does truly get very, very interesting, and that's where you can get creative. Now, originally, I had a Leica M10D. As a professional photographer, it is a must that I have a backup camera, so I needed to invest in a second camera. I did think about going with the Leica Q. I did think about going with the original SL. I tried them both out and I did really enjoy the experience of using both of them, but I ended up going with a Leica M10 here with the screen just because I wanted fluidity going from one camera to another. That is really important to me. It's not that important to everyone. Now, I don't often use 2 bodies on me at the same time. Typically, I just have a backup camera in my bag just because stuff does go wrong, and I really can't have an experience where one time something goes wrong, especially when someone's paying me to do an assignment and I'm in a remote location. It just can't happen. So I always have 2 cameras with me. I tried the Leica Q out and I really liked the experience of having a camera that could do autofocus every once in a while when I needed it. I like the idea of having macro when I need it. I like the idea of having weather seal when I need it. So I actually really did almost go down that road. The reason I didn't again was because I really did like the fluidity going from an M10D to an M10. I have the M10 every once in a while when I do need a screen. I have it, and the 28 millimeter on the original Leica Q was just too close to the other lens that I use all the time on the M10, which is the 35 millimeter, so it's just too close. Now, I did try out the SL with the adapter and using M lenses on it, and while I did like the experience, I just didn't like the weight. It took away from what I really liked about the M system, which just being minimalistic, minimalistic and just not having so much weight on me. Now, it is lighter, obviously, without the SL lenses, but overall, it's really why I got into the M system, is to be simple, to be lightweight, to be minimalistic. So that's why I didn't go with these. One thing that I am intrigued about moving forward is actually this Leica SL2S here, just because I'm doing way more video and I do like all the features and I do like the idea of using the adapter on this and using my M lenses to shoot video when I don't need autofocus. So that's very, very intriguing to me. I have to put a lot of thought into that. I am going to field test this as a video camera once I can travel again, so I will give you a report on that when I actually get to use it. So that's my explanation of these three beautiful cameras. I hope it made some sense to you. I hope it brought some clarity to you. In the end, guys, like I said earlier, take everything I've said with a grain of salt. Take everything that camera companies say with a grain of salt. Take all reviews with a grain of salt. Think about all the features these cameras offer and what they don't offer. Think about how you like to work. Think about your tendencies. Yes, if you want to change, that's fine, but really know yourself. Really think about what you need and what you don't need. Do you need high megapixels? Do you need all these features? Do you need 4K video? Maybe. Also, maybe not. So put a lot of thought into it. Another piece of advice I can say, if you get the opportunity to pick up one of these cameras and hold it in your hand, or even better yet, use it for a couple days, highly recommend you do that. All camera systems, but especially Leica systems, are a huge investment. So the last thing you want to do is regret that purchase. So put a lot of thought into it. Get as much experience using these cameras as you can before you invest in any system. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful day.